Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1 to verse 7. It says, "Now the point in what we are saying is this. We have such a high priest, one who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heaven, a minister in the holy places, in the true tent that the Lord set up, not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer gifts and sacrifices. Thus, it is necessary for the priest also to have something to offer. Now, if you were on earth, you would not be a priest at all, since there are priests who offer gifts according to the law. They serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly things. For when Moses was about to erect the tent, he was instructed by God, saying, 'See that you make everything according to the pattern that was shown you on the mountain.'" Good morning to you. You've joined us on the Fifth Connection on this day, the 5th of March, and it's a wonderful Wednesday morning filled with great challenges and excitement. And trust that as you roll out of bed, you'll roll out with a confidence in God. Instead of saying, "Good God, it's morning," say, "Good morning, God." We continue right along in our recounting through the story of Hebrews of what stick-to-itiveness looks like. What does it mean to hold on, to keep on going, not stagnate, but to press on? And that is the challenge that is given to Christian Hebrews, those of the Christian faith. They have embraced Christ as King of their lives, and now they stand in danger of defection because things have gotten quite difficult. And the writer presents them what is the best. We often say the good becomes the enemy of the best. And in this case, the best is cling to Christ. The good, but the obsolete and the ineffective is what these believers want to go back to. Something of what people are challenged with today in the Hebrew roots movement. That particular movement, the Hebrew roots movement, is an attempt by those who embrace it, by those who stick with it, to draw closer to God by holding on to things from Judaism. These things are perceived to draw you closer to God, to be significant and of great value. And many in that movement have trusted Christ, but it also consists of those who are non-Jewish professing and, as I said, are Christians for the most part. There's no normal sort of hierarchy of leadership and organization, yet these leaders and writers are from diverse backgrounds and churches. And so it's quite a motley crew, if you will. But this idea of you draw near to God by embracing the old is what is in view. And so this morning, as we look at the book of Hebrews, it broadly divides into three sections. The story unfolds in the first 4 verses, showing that Christ is the superordinate Son. Then from verse 5 to 10:18, Christ is the superordinate walk in his worth and his work. And then 10 verse 19 to chapter 13, he's the superordinate way. And this morning we are in the section that deals with dualities. The dualities. If you're given to dualism, then you make this very stringent separation between spirit and matter. Spirit is good, matter is evil. Heaven is good, earth is evil. How do you deal with that duality? And here's the question: why sacrifice the inferior for the superior? Why do we go on to sacrifice the superior for the inferior? In chapter 8 of the story, from verse 1 to 10, verse 18, Christ's ministry is greater than the ministry of the old covenant. Old covenant under Aaron. The writer is going to demonstrate Christ's singular, yes, singular qualification as the high priest forever in the sanctuary of heaven, where he is serving as a priest, he's ministering as a mediator of a better covenant through his death and rising to the throne at the right hand of the Father, because he's the source of eternal salvation for those who obey him. And thereby he supersedes the inadequate Mosaic provisions for sin. So in this section of the text, from chapter 8, verse 1 to verse 13, this becomes sort of a bridge, a transition. It functions as an introduction to the exposition that follows in Hebrews chapter 9. And so Christ is the mediator and the minister in the heavenly sanctuary of a better covenant, which unites God and man. And that covenant is what causes the old to be obsolete, to become obsolete, to become dated, so that the Mosaic covenant is the one that is ineffective now and obsolete in the light of who Jesus is. And so we're going to look at 5 lines of the story, 5 verses from chapter 8, which moves from the shadow to the substance. Move into the sunshine, get out of the shade is the challenge, because vertical and horizontal dualities find their intersecting convergence in the person of Christ. And so we are going to look at the dualism that we encounter in the earthly sanctuary and its sacrifices, and the realities that exist in the heavenly, real sanctuary. This section sounds very much like a Greek Platonic philosophy. The whole concept of eternal ideas or forms that cannot be perceived by the senses, but are perceived or known through the intellect. It's the dualism between matter and idea. And this is one of the important reasons for associating the author of Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, to being one who is from Alexandria, because of the plausibility of Apollos as a possible author, where, of course, Greek dualism appears to have been popular. So without going off on that, let's look at two key ideas that surface in the text. We are to affirm the substantial superiority of the new, because Christ is seated to serve in the true tent which God has pitched. The true tent is heaven. The shadow is the tabernacle, the tent on earth. It's a copy after the heavenly tabernacle. So let's take note that literally Jesus has taken his seat at the right hand of the majesty on high. Watch what Psalm 110 says. Verse number 1. The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. That's where Jesus is seated. He's a high priest and he sits at the right hand of the throne of the majesty on high. It's like the little kid who said, why does Jesus at the right hand of the Father only use his left hand? Why does God only use his left hand? Well, the answer, because Jesus is sitting on his right hand. Now, that's not the point. The point here is Jesus is seated at God's right hand as the anointed priest. Zechariah is helpful in this regard. Chapter 6 and verse 13. It is he who shall build the temple of the Lord and shall bear royal honor and shall sit and rule on his throne. And there shall be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. Again, an allusion in the Old Testament of the one who would sit at the right hand of God, none other than Jesus in verse 1 and verse 2 of the unfolding story of chapter 8. And he's ministering from that posture, that position, in the holy places, in the true tent that the Lord has set up and not man. Now God is the one who's in charge, and he's in the heavens, and Jesus is at his right hand. And so the author is, you get the feel that he's rambling through all these Old Testament ideas and pictures and factual information. But he's doing that because he understands his audience. They are Christian Hebrews. They come out of a Jewish background. I wonder what that says for those of us who are involved with people. Do we have a good grip of where they are from a cultural standpoint? We don't go in ice cold. We have a connection with our audience. And that's why we can speak in a relevant way, because culture, community, that which binds us in terms of our identity, becomes a bridge across which we traverse in order to give and communicate the message. Now, the second idea in chapter 8, verse 3 to 5. The writer affirms the temporal inferiority of the old. He first of all affirms the substantial superiority of the new, because Jesus is seated to serve in the true tent in heaven. Affirms the substantial superiority of the new, and now he affirms the temporal inferiority of the old. Watch how he balances and counterbalances the old with the new, the temporal with the eternal, the heavenly with the earthly. Because this high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices. And since a high priest does that, Christ too had to offer something as a high priest. He offered himself. He's not a high priest on the earth after physical lineage, but after a heavenly one, after the order of Melchizedek. And so there is no need in verse 3 to verse 5 to offer something on earth as if he was earthbound only. There's no need to offer something on earth since he is not bound to the earth. Verse 3. Every high priest is appointed to offer gifts and sacrifices. Thus, it is necessary for this priest also to have something to offer. Now, if he were on earth, but the point is, he's in heaven. He's sitting at the right hand of the majesty on high, serving in a sanctuary that is real. It's not the shadowy one that Moses made in accordance with the pattern that Moses was shown. Verse 5, all these things serve as a copy and a shadow of the heavenly things. So here are two questions for you. What inferior decisions have you opted for in contradistinction or in opposition to superior ones that were before you? You've chosen the good instead of the better and the best. You've chosen the inferior instead of the superior or better decision that would better serve more people, better serve you in your serve for God. Think of some of those silly decisions that we make, sometimes on a daily basis. What inferior choices have we made? And then secondly, why have you opted for that which is inferior versus that which is superior? Why have you opted for the old in favor or over against the new? And you watch your life stagnate. These believers were in danger of defection. But this morning again, according to chapter 4 and verse 12 and verse 13, the word is active. It is sharper than any two-edged sword. And if you have any ideas of defecting or falling away, the scriptures is the thing that God uses, the agency by which he moves into our lives to expose our innermost thoughts, because nothing is hidden before him with whom we have to do. Everything is out in the open. And so this morning, go for what is best. Go for what is best. Go for what is superior. Go for what is great and superior in terms of the choices you make today, because they will be there. They will come onto your horizon, and then you have to choose. How will you choose? You make silly choices, or you will make good ones? And the good ones and the best ones are normally the toughest ones. So don't choose the line of least resistance. Go for God today. Stick with him. Trust that you will have a good day. Goodbye for now.